and welcome to That Time on That Trip, where we connect through lessons learned in the great outdoors. My name's Maddie, and this is normally when I would introduce our guest for today, but I figured since it's my first episode, I would just do it myself in case I need to record things over and over again. I'm the only one that's going to get annoyed with myself, not some poor guest I have. First of all, wow, my first episode. I have been thinking about this so long. It's crazy that it's finally happening. My goal with this is to at least make 20 episodes, you know? I read something that most podcasts don't even get to 3 episodes, so just trying my best, trying to stay consistent for a while before maybe continuing, maybe going on a different path. So excited to be here. Like I said before, my name is Maddie. I am originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I grew up going outdoors all the time, really love hiking. I lived in a van for a little bit. I traveled the world before that, but I'm starting this as a series on my YouTube channel that will also be put on podcasting platforms. Every week, hopefully, we'll have a new guest to share a story about a hard time, a funny time, just any event they've had in the outdoors, whether that's hiking, walking around your neighborhood, living in a van, anything outside. And I know there are things like this out there already, but I'm hoping to put a spin on it to where it feels very familiar. It feels like the guests that are coming on and the stories they're telling are things that could happen to you or your next door neighbor or something. The title is definitely a work in progress though. When I thought of it, that time on that trip, I thought, okay, so that's something that sounds very like you'd say in conversation. Oh, remember that time on that trip? Or remember that time on that trip? The thing is, though, it's not necessarily rolling off my tongue when I say it in a recording. If Beer and Beautiful Places, my YouTube channel, was like, I don't know, a household name, I could call it like Beer with Beautiful People or Lessons with Lovely People. But I'm hoping that people don't already know me and my channel are going to discover this. And so I need a name that will encapsulate what this is going to be the second you hear it, you know, so you don't have to be like, huh, what's that? But for now, it's That Time on That Trip. I'm hoping to publish this on my channel on Wednesday, and the day after that, Thursday, hopefully getting the podcast on Spotify, Apple, is it Apple Podcasts? I don't know. I'm a Spotify person, but any streaming, any podcast platform, hopefully I'll have it up the day after I have it on my channel. And that Thursday is Thanksgiving, which really fits into the story I'm about to tell because it's about being thankful and how life-changing that can be. I'm really excited for this story too because it takes place at the birthplace of Beer and Beautiful Places. I was at a time in my life where I would drink beer outside a lot, whether that was hanging out with people that were rock climbing after a hike, after a day of work sitting outside. And I kept thinking someone needs to have an Instagram account where it's just pictures of beers outside. Like, it's always such a vibe. And then when I was on this island I'm about to tell you about in the story, I was like, I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and start it. And I remember buying a like 18 pack or something of this very cheap beer. I don't even remember what it was called, but it had a dog on it. And now looking back, that Instagram didn't take off right away. In 2020, it was kind of a pandemic hobby. And then after that, I was like, I want to expand this to other platforms. How about YouTube? And now my YouTube channel, I think, has I've been able to connect with more people through it than I ever could on Instagram. So that's kind of cool. First came Instagram, then came YouTube. Now, hopefully, comes the podcast. So to set you up with some context before the story, I was living in Australia. I had a working holiday visa, which is where you can be on vacation but be legally working in that country while you're there. There are some stipulations, but I had lived about an hour north of Melbourne. If you say Melbourne, people kind of laugh at you. Also, the funniest thing I ever said to Australian people was the word banana. They just died because they say banana. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I had already gone on trips to Sydney and Tasmania and to the Red Centre. So yeah, I had been in the country a while. I was really enjoying it, excited to be somewhere tropical. But I was looking for what was next. Until that time I learned lessons in happiness on that Australia trip. The year was 2018, and I was on a small town-sized tropical island in Australia. I spent the first half of my visa working as an au pair, but when I moved to the island, instead of having a paying job, I worked 4 hours a day doing housekeeping at a guest house in exchange for a free place to stay. The place to stay was called the backpacker house. Backpacker as in someone traveling on the cheap, often with their things in a big backpack instead of a suitcase, not backpacking in the hiking sense. The backpacker house was dusty and dilapidated. Once I made the mistake of buying muffins, only to find ants inside the package when I went to eat them. Some nights I heard possums fighting in the attic above me. There was a kitchen, but if you tried to make yourself dinner around 6 to 9 p.m., you'd likely be moving around at least 2 other people also cooking a meal. I was embarrassed by the fact that I never really learned to cook for myself, and it was impossible to hide the fact that I made plain rice and checked the directions on the bag 5 times. As crowded as we were, though, the other backpackers were what made being there worth it. About 6 to 8 of us were there at a time, and usually at least 4 countries were represented. Everyone was a traveler in their 20s, on a budget but wanting to soak in what the island had to offer. After we got done with work for the day, we'd pile in one of the Jeep-like vehicles that our guest house rented out and drive past palm trees and boulders to the beach. The island we lived on had about 8 different beaches. One that was best for sunsets, one that had the easiest rocks to jump off of, some that were easier to drive to, some that were less crowded. There was also snorkeling gear available to borrow, and once you got the breathing process down, there was a whole world to explore underwater. Some of the most exciting things I saw were a stingray the size of a coffee table, colorful parrotfish, and black-tip reef sharks, which are only about 2 to 3 feet long and don't bother humans. The fact that it's so common to swim in the area gave me some peace of mind, but because the ocean could have anything in it, and Australia is kind of known for dangerous animals, my heart was racing the entire time. I was very scared, but kept pushing myself to go explore anyway. The only injury I got was cutting my foot on a barnacle. And there was an incident when someone saw a blue-bottle jellyfish, and we quickly swam as far around it as possible. The part we could see was smaller than a normal bottle of soda, but the long tentacles could have been anywhere. Another time a few of us were snorkeling by a pier just to get out and chat with some locals afterwards, who thought we already knew there had been a tiger shark spotted in the area recently. After we were done at the beach for the day, we'd drive home and take turns showering, short as possible so there'd be a chance that the last person would get some hot water. In the evenings, we'd play drinking games, watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or sometimes even have a group meal. For the first couple weeks I was there, life was amazing. I felt like I was living in a movie. Shotgun by George Ezra, which, if you don't remember it, it's the one that goes, "I'll be riding shotgun underneath the hot sun, feeling like a someone." Anyway, that song was popular at the time, and it felt like the theme song to my life. But as time went on, the perks of the situation became expected, and the less desirable parts became harder to overlook. While we got to stay in the backpacker house in exchange for working at the guest house, we didn't have any income and groceries could be expensive on the island. Working as a housekeeper wasn't ideal either. Very repetitive, tedious, boring work, sometimes kind of gross. Unless the guest house was all booked up, there wasn't enough work for all of us to fill 4 hours, so you had to drag out tasks and figure out ways to look busy even if you weren't. I was also feeling conflicted about what to do next in life. In Australia, if you followed the criteria, you could work 90 days in certain industries and get your 1-year visa extended to 2. I was searching for a job that met the requirements, but hadn't found one yet. I felt directionless and worried about not using the time I had wisely. Once I noticed my outlook shifting, I tried to reverse it and go back to how I felt when I first arrived. I was really lucky to be there, to get to live on an island and go snorkeling or sunbathing every day, to spend time with fun, friendly people from all over the world. This would be something beyond my wildest dreams a year earlier. Why didn't it feel like it now? One day, after all my regular cleaning duties were done, I was meticulously dusting and organizing a shelf in a common room in the guest house. There were some board games, some knickknacks, some books left behind by guests, and I was spending as much time as I could on each of them. One book was titled The Magic. Reading the back of it, I learned it was about improving your outlook on life. Right up my alley. I tucked it away, continued running out the clock on my shift, and came back for it at the end of the day. Sitting cross-legged on my bed later, I cracked the book open and read the introduction. It said the secret to feeling like life is magical is to be grateful. I thought, I feel like I already am grateful. I know what I have and think about how lucky I am all the time. But the book actually said something along the lines of, you're probably thinking, I already am grateful. This guide will help you deepen your gratitude through daily practices. If you truly commit to this and participate every day, your life will change. At the end of the 30 days, you can even harness the magic of gratitude to get what you want in life. I was skeptical about the last part, but I decided to dive in. The first daily gratitude practice was to find a good rock, one that felt right and fit in the palm of your hand. And every night from now on, think about all the good things you experienced that day. Choosing your favorite moment from the day, you were to squeeze that rock, letting the thankfulness flow through you and infusing your good thoughts into the rock. I could see why the introduction made it clear you'd have to approach these with an open mind. But I really wanted to deepen my gratitude, like it said, so that evening I found a smooth gray rock at the beach with the best sunset views. That was my day 1. The second day's practice was to, from every morning from then on, start the day by writing down 10 things you were thankful for and why. Sometimes I really had to get creative in order to have 10 new blessings each day, but I did. The third day, the reader was to reflect on which 3 people have the most positive effect on their life. Find photographs of them and leave those in a place you'll see them every day. That's where I ran into a problem. At that point, I didn't have people consistently in my life. The people I spent every day with, I only knew for a few weeks, and I'd probably never see them again once we parted ways. I'm extremely grateful for my parents and for my brothers and my extended family, but how could I narrow that down into 3? Plus, there was nowhere that printed photos on the island. So I just let that one go and was faithful as I could to everything else. The other practices included taking a walk, chanting, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," with each step as you pictured every single bone, every single muscle or tendon, your sense of balance, and every possible thing that needed to go right for you to take that step. Another was pretending gratitude was a seasoning you sprinkled on every meal, with every bite remembering all that went into that food reaching your plate and noticing how that enriched the taste. While some of these practices were something I wouldn't have done before, They slowly but surely made a difference in the way I thought about things. I didn't go grocery shopping in a tiny, expensive IGA. I was granted a selection of food shipped in to fuel our community on the island, and I got to pay for food I chose with my money my past self worked hard to earn. When I went for walks in the morning, each stingray resting in the shallow bay seemed to be waiting there to give me the joy of seeing them. With my legs able to take me wherever I want, my senses able to take it all in, my brain able to process what it all meant. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world just to wake up to a new day. And the fact that it was a new day on a beautiful, tropical, unique island was just the icing on top. Towards the end of the 30 days, I reached the part in the book about harnessing this magic to bring you what you want in life. In the same format as the 10 things you're thankful for every morning, you were to write a few things as if you already had received what you would want in the future. What would you ask for if you know you'll get it? What would your future ideal self be thankful for? I don't remember my complete list, but I know I asked for clarity about what to do next in life. Like I've mentioned before, I knew I couldn't keep doing housekeeping for basically free, but didn't know what to do next. Just knowing what I wanted to do would be a huge weight off my shoulders. But honestly, that decision was going to have to be made eventually, so that would definitely happen whether I harnessed the power of gratitude or not. I did want a boyfriend though. Not in the way of, oh, I need a man, but having 2 people instead of 1 to solve problems that came up when traveling would be so much more convenient. Most of the other backpackers were traveling as couples, and it seemed like fun. The island was full of pristine, sandy beaches and scenic vistas, the picture you think of when imagining a romantic location. I thanked the universe in advance for someone to enjoy the island with. What else did I really want, though? The other main downside to my life was that working housekeeping was repetitive and uneventful, and I envied the other backpackers that had music downloaded on their phone to listen to throughout the day. I didn't really want to pay for all that, though. It would be nice if somehow there was a way to save music for free. So I thanked the universe in advance for music on my phone. Deep down, I wasn't 100% positive these manifestations would come true in the time frame I needed them to, but I'm always open to try something new and see what happens, so I believed in it as hard as I could. Still enjoying my life on the island, thanks to these daily gratitude practices, I went about my routine as usual, enjoying hikes where I would notice sleepy koalas in the trees, swims where I would feel one with the ocean life. I knew I had it good. I also knew it couldn't last. It felt like my bank account was the sand in the top of an hourglass. I would eventually have to move on, as all the backpackers did. There was a way to stay on the island and work, for money this time, and if it was in the field of hospitality, I could extend my visa to stay in Australia longer. I went all around asking hostels, cafes, and restaurants if they were hiring. A trendy restaurant across from where the rock wallabies came out in the evening let me do a trial shift, but the owner had a very hands-off approach and I couldn't do anything right. She told me to carry the food to the tables that ordered them quickly, and I walked too fast and ungracefully that I messed up how the food was aesthetically arranged. I tried to carry the next plate out carefully with both hands, and she said that didn't look very fine dining. I ought to just use one hand. By the end of the shift, I was so self-conscious and self-doubting. I was just thankful the customers politely ignored how obviously my hands were shaking as I set their orders down. Needless to say, I wasn't a good fit at that restaurant, and they weren't a good fit for what I was looking for either. So I kept on searching for jobs that fit the requirements. I reached out to email addresses listed on job boards and filled out applications, but no one ever got back to me. In retrospect, I needed to go job hunting in person in major towns. Since there's so many backpackers hoping to fill these roles, they go to whoever's right there. But I didn't know that till it was too late. Eventually, I accepted that I could keep looking and looking, or just enjoy the time I had left in Australia. I chose the latter. I really did enjoy the time I had left to the fullest. I ended up hopping on budget flights to explore Darwin and Perth. I made friends with other travelers, which led to living out of a van on a month-long road trip from Perth to Adelaide to Melbourne, where I got to explore caves and wine samples and the most turquoise beaches I'd ever seen. The good times kept on coming, but before that, I had to leave the island I called home for the past 2 months. I packed my suitcase with my sketch pad turned journal where I wrote the 10 things every morning, but I left the book for someone else to find. The 30 daily practices were completely perspective shifting, and I hoped another open-minded traveler would benefit from it too. By the way, if you're interested in reading this book for yourself, ask for The Magic by Rhonda Byrne at your local library. It seemed to just appear for me when I needed it, but it's also a widely distributed book in the Secret series. As far as the things I tried to manifest besides a decision on what I wanted to do next, sadly, I never found a special someone to enjoy the island with. I went on one date with a local that chewed with his mouth open and spoke rudely to who I guess was his mom on the phone, and figured if I was meant to find someone, I would. I was grateful I always had plenty of fellow travelers to enjoy the island with, in a friend way instead. Surprisingly, I did get to download music on my phone. Spotify was running a free trial on Premium. I had never gotten a free trial before, so maybe that was my manifestations at work. Suitcase in hand, I boarded the ferry to Townsville, the closest town on the mainland. After finding the hostel I'd stay at before my flight the next morning, I found my way to the beach to look out onto Magnetic Island one last time. How lucky I was. I faced my fears and explored the reefs, saw exciting animals in their natural habitats, both in the water and on land, and watched the sunset almost every day. I had what would seem like a perfect life to anyone I told back home. But nothing is perfect. I started the daily gratitude practices because I wanted to really appreciate what was in front of me. Even when I achieved that, though, it couldn't change the fact that I was living an unsustainable lifestyle. There's an art to noticing every little thing, thinking through all that happened in order for you to experience it, and realizing what it would be like without. That being said, the obstacles in life will still be there, and trying to use positivity to erase them might work temporarily, but not in the long run. The biggest lesson is that obstacles are still something to be grateful for. It's what keeps life interesting. Thank you for listening to my story. Do you have a funny, interesting, or thought-provoking story that happened in the great outdoors? To someone you know? This is the place to tell it. See the link in the YouTube video description to apply. Being a brand new baby podcast, anything you can do to help me out really goes a long way. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you could like, comment, or subscribe. If you're watching this on iTunes, if you could write a 5-star review. Anything you could do really helps me out. And thank you for listening to this the full way. That helps me out to begin with. Till next time, thank you for listening. Hope you get a chance to get outdoors sometime soon.